So it's been a while since I've done one of these, and in part it's because I have been in the last kind of 3 to 6 months more going into a more not even just internal space, but just especially after last year, just needing to kind of quieten the outer noise because it got really noisy. Probably still is. I've just checked out. I've tuned out a little bit, to be honest. So what I want to talk about today, I recognize and want to acknowledge and put forward right off the bat that I'm going to be speaking to a very probably specific niche of people. And not everyone might understand what I'm saying. And I don't mean to sound patronized when I say that, but my point is that there's certain things that I'm not going to go into and explain because I just think my words will either resonate or they won't. And if they don't, I totally respect that in you. And this might not be the podcast to listen to today. So what I want to talk about is there's been all of this talk about awakening these last 2 years because there has been a huge opportunity and catalyst for awakening. And the thing is it's an interesting kind of term, or there's an interesting relationship that I have to it, because on one hand you think, yes, awakening. You know, even before all of this, I always had an interest in evolving or growing, learning through experience, awakening into just awareness of oneself, life, this journey, existence itself. I could get super existential here, but I'm going to just keep it focused. So on one hand, awakening is a beautiful thing. And there's been all this talk about the great awakening and people awakening and wanting people to awaken. And then there's the frustration of maybe that's not happening. And so there's also a disillusionment and some people feeling hopeless. And, hopeful and hopeless, I think, are two states that pull us out of presence. Hoping for something, and if it doesn't happen, we become hopeless because we become disappointed. And actually, what's required, I think, now more than ever is presence. Just stay in the present moment with what is. But even with that said, there's been a disillusionment for many, and maybe even a disappointment, and a kind of like, well, how does one live in this world? Because awakening can be a beautiful thing, but also I kind of understand the cliche that ignorance is bliss, because sometimes it's easier to not know certain things. I feel like I've always been someone that has been, this term is so overused right now and it has some negative connotations, but I'm going to just go with it for the sake of the argument. I've always felt like a black sheep. There's always been a part of me that's like, I don't belong here. I'm not from here. I kind of want to go home. I didn't really want to come here to begin with, but I haven't, obviously have some work to do. So I've always felt like a black sheep, and there was a period of my life where that was a challenge. And then there was a period of my life where I really embraced that, and I really attracted my herd of black sheep or rainbow colored sheep, whatever. I'm just going with the terms so that you can understand what I'm trying to convey. But now more than ever, I feel like I'm in a world where I really feel like I don't belong to this world. Like if I always felt that for a long time, now more than ever, my goodness, I'm like, how do I don't want to fit in, but how do I be here? How do I be here? And how do I feel like I can belong to a place where I don't feel like I belong to? And I, at times, struggle to be here because what my desire is to do, to experience, to see manifest in this world, I don't see it happening. And it hurts. It hurts. It's painful. And even though I don't put myself in a position where I think I have to save the world, and I wouldn't want to be so pompous as to think that that's my job, my role, but I know myself, and ever since I was a little girl, my kind of intention for this life, I felt, was my purpose, dare I say it, was that I really wanted to have a positive effect on humanity. And so I think for many people there is this real genuine longing for humanity to awaken, because that would be a beautiful thing. It would bring us into a greater state of harmony, peace, love, joy, freedom. It would bring us back more into our natural state, our inner nature, connect us to our inner nature and connect us to outer nature, because I think we've been really not only taken off track for a very long time now, but I feel like we've been clamped down and been told to live in a state of fear, and that is not our natural state. And what staying in a state of fear does to the human is it really can turn it into a very ugly version. And again, I don't mean to sound patronizing or judgmental, but I think those that are resonating understand where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to say. So there's pain. When there doesn't feel like there's an awakening, there's pain, because it's like you want that for your fellow humankind. You want that for the world. You want that for humanity. And for those of us that have felt a certain disillusionment, there's the like, well, what's the point? Because it doesn't seem like that's wanted. People don't want to wake up. They don't want to wake up. Okay. Can't do anything about it. Then what? Then what? Then why am I here? What's the point of it all? And I think, so I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we kind of came, using this term of, she said, the trauma of awakening. And I was like, wow, yeah. The trauma of awakening. Isn't that interesting? That is such an interesting term. Because you think awakening is just a beautiful thing. It's not. Sometimes awakening is, it's really hard. It's really painful. Think about when you've awakened to a certain truth within a relationship, a marriage, a family dynamic, never mind like how the world is structured and run, right? So, and there's different levels of awakening, right? I felt like I had an awareness, and I like to use the word awareness because awakening now, it's taken on many different connotations, and, you know, in one world it means this, in another world it means that. And what I mean by world is like different sections of human beings, and I don't want to compartmentalize and label. And yeah, so I will use awareness because I feel like when we are in a state of awareness, we're in a state of presence, and we're in a state of being able to see what is that lies before us, inside of us, around us, outside of us. It's a true state of presence. And that there's a pain when you can see what is happening that isn't beneficial to humans, to humanity. And there is this desire to want to heal that or transform that, alchemize that. And what do you do when that feels like it's not possible? So being in this state of awareness sometimes is really confronting, because you're like, well, I don't want to see that, because now that I've seen it, some of us have seen it like for 20 years, some of us saw it 20 years, but it's been growing, and the last 2 years of like, oh wow, I didn't realize it went that deep. But it can be really confronting because, well, what do you do with it if you don't feel like you can change it? What do you do with it if it makes you feel even more so like you don't belong here? What do you do with it if, you know, this intention to bring in beauty and love and harmony, and not in a like airy-fairy spiritual, let's just transcend all the bad stuff and negativity and believe that everything is beautiful and positive. I don't mean that. I'm a very practical, down-to-earth person that like, I believe in like, look at the shadow and then alchemize it. But not because of denial, but because of acceptance and love. You love even the darkness so that it can transform. Where you acknowledge it. You know, at the very least, you acknowledge its existence and its presence in the world. And then it's like, okay, and then what are you going to create from that? We have so much more power than we believe. And at the same time, here's the conundrum is that, yes, in some ways we have so much power because on an energetic level and the way that we choose to show up in life, that is under our control. And what we feed into, what we give our energy to, that is our biggest power. But we're still in this 3D construct, having to live under these, you know, whatever, certain conditions or restrictions or narratives, or we're still held in this structure. And so there's this this tug of war between, well, this is what I want to be embodying, and this is the reality of what I'm living within. And that becomes a challenge too, right? So you have the awareness of what the structure is, and you might go, well, I don't want to live in this structure, but I kind of still have to. But I can resonate on a different frequency, right? But that still takes a lot of effort, because it's having to keep an internal experience that is literally salmon swimming upstream against the mainstream. So I don't have the answer, but I just want to acknowledge that my sense is that there's a good amount of people out there that are struggling and that are finding it hard to be here. And all I want to say is, like, I hear you, and you're not alone. Even if you really feel like you're alone, you're not. And I don't have some kind of positive speech of like, keep going, hold the line, because I think it's just, you know what, I hear you. Yep, here we are. And who the hell knows where we're going? And I think now more than ever, we are just being asked to stay here, and then stay here, and then stay here. And it's hard because, how do you plan your life? And maybe you can go, well, that's a bit of an illusion, but you know what I mean? What are we growing towards when it's like, wow, it's really hard to know what's going to be around the corner tomorrow? So even just on a practical level, it's hard to plan things. It's hard to create things. I'm hearing that a lot from all sects of people, different ages, different locations, going, wow, it's really hard. Whether it's a creative project or traveling or home or relationship, it's really hard to build something because we feel like we're in limbo, hanging in midair, not knowing, where's this all going? And is it all going in a really terrible direction? Or does it have the opportunity, possibility to grow into something beautiful? But transitions suck. They're always the hardest part, and it's what our culture's so terrible at. It's like, no, Band-Aid, distraction, move on to the next. Like, people can't even get out of a relationship without jumping straight into something else because they don't want to sit with the pain. They don't want to sit with the transition. We don't even age gracefully because we're terrible with the transitions of aging, or going through different rites of passage, becoming a teenager, becoming an adult, becoming a parent, becoming, whatever, menopause, all of these beautiful natural transitions and cycles in our life, we are just, no, I don't want to look at it, don't want to deal with it. And so then we're crap at it, because if you can't be with something, it's always going to come out slightly sideways, or there's always going to be some part of us that we're neglecting or abandoning. Because otherwise we would just be in the natural state and the natural cycle, and even though things might be challenging or hard or uncomfortable, we'd move through them. We wouldn't just like pile them up in the, this closet full of skeletons is getting mighty packed on a collective level. So again, I don't have the answers, but just wanted to speak out to say that it's been challenging for me at times. There's been times that have been really lovely and liberating to just be like, right, I'm creating my own space. And I've popped out of that kind of, whatever you want to call it, illusion. And then there are times where it's been a real struggle, and it's confusing and traumatizing, and I don't know what to do with it, and I don't know where to go, and do I belong, and how do I keep on moving forward, really honoring kind of my heart's desire or my soul's purpose or whatever. All of these words sometimes are very loaded. I find words to be so restricting sometimes, but we've got to use them. But how do I do it in this world where I feel like I no longer belong? Maybe some of you resonate. If you don't, that's okay too. I hope that we can hold it all with non-judgment, without projecting. Like, really, this is, I think, the biggest lesson that I'm recognizing is presence. And presence requires lack of judgment, lack of projection, lack of control. is just pure presence, to be with what is and allow the mystery of it to unfold and to feel the feels along the way. Yeah, so I'm wanting to create a conversation, a community, a support system. So I'm thinking about bringing this into my coaching practice. I'm thinking about writing about it. So if this resonates, if this interests you, would you be willing to drop me a line? I'd love to hear. If it does, I will build upon it and move in that direction and hopefully create a support system for this very, very challenging transition. Sending you love from afar. Thanks for listening.